So now we are going to see about the data classifications and frequency distributions. So first of all, we shall see about the data classification. What are the advantages of performing data classification or classifying the data? So this classification of data, it is the process of arranging the data in groups or classes. On what basis? On the basis of certain properties. What does it serve? What purpose does it serve to do this classification? So classification of statistical data, it can serve the following purposes. Firstly, it can condense the raw data into a form which is suitable for statistical analysis. Then it can remove complexities and highlight the features of the data. It can facilitate in comparisons and in drawing the inferences from the data. So for example, if university students in some particular case are divided in a particular course are divided according to gender, then their results can be compared. Then it can provide information about the mutual relationships amongst the elements of a data set. So for example, based on literacy and criminal tendency of a group of people, it can be established whether literacy has any impact or not on the criminal tendency. Similarly, it can help in the statistical analysis by separating the elements of the data set into homogeneous groups and hence bring out the points of similarity and dissimilarity. So these were some of the advantages of performing data classification. Now we shall see what are the requisites of ideal classification. So this classification of data is decided after taking into consideration the nature, the scope and the purpose of the investigation or research. But still, the ideal classification should have the following characteristics. First of all, it should be unambiguous. That means there should be no confusion at all as to how the various classes have been defined. There must be only one class for each element of the data set. So let us say, for example, if the population of the country is divided into two classes, let us say literates and illiterates, then an exhaustive definition of the terms used would be considered. That means you should be very clear in your definition as to who is a literate and who is an illiterate. Now the classes should be exhaustive and mutually exclusive. That means each element of the data set must belong to a class. So for this, sometimes what we can do is we can create an extra class also with some title called others, so as to accommodate all the remaining elements of the data set. Now each class should be mutually exclusive, so that each element must belong to only one class. So for example, let us say that we are classifying students according to age. Now below 25 years and more than 20 years. To say like this is not correct. Why? Because students of age 20 to 25 may belong to both the classes. So these classes have to be exhaustive and mutually exclusive. Then the classification should be stable. So this classification of the data set into various classes, it should be done in such a manner that if each time an investigation is conducted, it remains more or less unchanged, and hence the results of one investigation may be compared with that of the other. So for example, classification of the country's population by a census survey based on occupation sometimes suffers from this defect, because various occupations are defined in different ways in successive censuses, and as such these figures may not be strictly comparable. Now the classification should be flexible. So the classification should be flexible so that the suitable adjustments can be made in new situations and circumstances. So but flexibility does not mean instability. The data should be divided into few major classes which must be further subdivided. Normally there would not be many changes in the major classes, only small subclasses may need a change, and the classification can thus retain the merit of stability and yet have flexibility. Please understand that the term stability does not mean rigidity of the classes. The term is used in a relative sense. This one-time classification cannot remain stable for forever. With change in time, some classes may become obsolete and they may have to be dropped, and fresh classes may have to be added. So the classification may be called ideal if it can adjust itself to these changes and yet retain its stability. Now we are going to see the basis of classification. So in the first basis, we are seeing the geographical basis for classification. In geographical classification, obviously the data are classified on the basis of the geography or location as such. Maybe cities, districts, villages, etc. All these are the different bases for geographical classification. So over here on the screen, what you can see is that the classification has been done state-wise. These are 4 states in India, and the data which is given over there is population density per square kilometer. This is approximate. It is the data has been derived from the census results. Now usually in geographical classification, what we do is that the elements in the data set are listed by the frequency size, just to emphasize the importance of various geographical regions, as in ranking the states by the population density in this particular case. So we have started with the least and then we have gone to the highest population density. Now next one is the chronological basis of classification, which is of course based on time. So such classifications are also called time series because data are usually listed in chronological order, starting with the earliest period. So in this particular case, once again we are talking about the population density per square kilometer, and here we have started with 1971, then 81. Every time we are taking a gap of 1 decade up to 2001, and once again this is the population density per square kilometer. So this is called as chronological classification. It is also called as time series. Now third basis of classification is called qualitative basis of classification. So in qualitative classification, the data are classified on the basis of the descriptive characteristics or on the basis of some attributes like gender, literacy, region, education, etc., which may not be quantified. So this can be done in 2 ways. One is called as simple classification. So in simple classification, each class is just divided into 2 subclasses. So for example, if we see, let us say that our classification was only this much. That means population divided on the basis of literacy, literate, illiterate. Then this is called as simple classification. On the other hand, we have manifold classification. So in this type of classification, a class is subdivided into more than 2 subclasses, which may be further subdivided. So for example, now you can see, if we look at this whole thing, initially the population was classified as literate and illiterate, and again literate population has been now classified as male and female, and again illiterate as male and female. So like this way we can continue with the subdivisions. So this is called as manifold classification. Then we have got the quantitative classification. So in this classification, the data are classified on the basis of some characteristics which can be measured, such as height, weight, income, expenditure, production, sales, etc. So these quantitative variables as such, they can be of course divided into 2 types. One is of course discrete variable and other is the continuous variable. So in the first table which we are seeing, this is the discrete data. This talks about the marks obtained and number of students who have got these marks. So here this is discrete data 20, 25, 30, 35. In the second table, on the other hand, we are seeing continuous data where we are seeing weight which is measured, and the data is given in the range like 50 to 60 kgs, 60 to 70 kgs, 70 to 80 kgs, 80 to 90 kgs. So like this way, this is the discrete classification of the data, and whereas this is the first one is the discrete and the second one is the continuous classification of the data, the array wise. So here there are some advantages for doing this in the for arranging the data as such in the using the arrays. Some disadvantages also could be there. In spite of advantages, in the array we don't get a summary. Okay, it just provides it in some order. It may also fail to highlight the salient characteristics of the data, which may be crucial in terms of relevance to decision making. So arrays mostly they are just used for arranging the data. So making use of the arrays, we can also use the tally bars, and then we can rewrite or represent the data by making use of the tally bars. Now we are going to see about the frequency distribution. So what is frequency distribution? So this frequency distribution, it divides the observations in the data into some conveniently established numerically ordered classes, groups or categories, and the number of observations in such class is referred to as frequency. Usually it is frequency is usually denoted by the small letter f. Now few examples of instances where frequency distributions could be useful are, supposing marketing manager wants to know how many units and what proportions or percentage of each product sells in a particular region during some given period. Or maybe a tax consultant desires to keep count of the number of times different size of FIRs are audited. Or maybe a financial analyst wants to keep track of the number of times the shares of manufacturing and service companies are to gain over a period of to be or gain order over a period of time. Now once again, before we see the construction, just we will talk about some advantages and disadvantages of the frequency distribution. So some advantages are like this: the data is expressed in a more compact form, then one can get a deeper insight into the salient characteristics of the data at the very first glance. One can quickly note the pattern distribution of observations following in the various classes. Then it also permits the use of more complex statistical techniques which help reveal certain other obscure or maybe hidden characteristics of the data. But then there are some disadvantages also. So in the process of grouping, individual observations as such, they lose their identity. So it becomes difficult to notice how the observations contained in each class are distributed. So this can apply to a frequency distribution which uses the tally method in the construction. Similarly, one serious limitation inherent in this kind of grouping is that there will be too much clustering of observations in various classes in case the number of classes is too small. So this may cause some of the essential information to remain unexposed. So therefore, it is very important that summarizing data should not be at the cost of losing the essential details. So the purpose should be to seek an appropriate as such compromise between having too much of details or too little. So to be able to achieve this compromise, some criterion are being discussed for constructing the frequency distribution. So that is why now we will see how to systematically construct a frequency distribution. So for this, the methodology is like this. First of all, you have to decide the number of class intervals. Then you have to decide the width of the class intervals. Then you have to decide the class limits. First we will talk about how to decide on the number of classes. So as such two formulas are there. What are these formulas? 2 raised to k should be greater than or equal to n. K is number of classes and n is the total number of observations. Let's say that we have total number of observations as 30. Then 2 raised to the power 5 is 32, which is greater than 30. So we can safely take k is equal to 5 as number of classes. Then there is one rule also, it is called Sturge's rule, where k is equal to 1 plus 3.222 log n to the base e. So if you solve this, again we are getting 5.759. Approximately we can take this also as to be equal to 5 classes as the number of classes. Then next is to decide the width of the class interval. So this is quite simple. What you have to do, just take the largest value minus smallest value, that means the range of the data, divided by how many classes are desired. So by the earlier rule you could come to know how many classes are desired. Now in the data set which was described earlier of 15 points, this largest number was 15, smallest was 1. So 14 divided by let's say we want 5 classes, so that is 2.8, approximately we will take it as 3. So this is to decide the width of the class interval. Now we have to decide the class limits. So we decided the class width as 3. Now how to decide the lower limit? Usually you should take the lowest number in the data as the lowest limit of the first class interval. So in our case it is 1. So we will start with 1, then every time you take a difference of 3. So that means 1 plus 3, so 1 to 4. Then next one is 4 to 7, then 7 to 10, then 10 to 13, then 13 to 16. Like this way we have taken the classes. So here we have got 5 classes. The class width was taken as 3 and all the data points are getting covered in these 5 classes. So exclusive class interval, we are excluding the upper limit, whereas in inclusive class interval we are including both the lower limit as well as the upper limit. Now many times we desire that the class intervals as such they should be exclusive. So we have to convert the inclusive class intervals to the exclusive class intervals. For this what we do, we make use of something called as the correction factor. So this correction factor is nothing but lower limit of a class minus upper limit of the previous class divided by 2. So let us say that our classes are like this, 10 to 19, 20 to 29. These are inclusive classes. So to find the correction factor, what we will do, take the lower limit of a class and minus upper limit of the previous class. So over here in the previous class we have got 0 to 9. So lower limit over here 10 minus upper limit 9 of the previous class divided by 2, that is 0.5. So what we have to do, we have to subtract this value from the lower limit and we have to add it to the upper limit. So here the lower limit is 10, we have subtracted 0.5 from the lower limit, so that will give us 9.5, and we have to add this 0.5 to the upper limit, that will give us 19.5. Same way from this 20 you will subtract 0.5, that will give us 19.5. Then to 29 you will add 0.5, that will give us 29.5. So now we have got exclusive class intervals 9.5 to 19.5 and 19.5 to 29.5. So you can use of whichever class you want. So for example here I have done 10 minus 9 using the previous class interval. You can also do like this, 20, that is lower limit of one class. So this is lower limit of this class minus upper limit of previous class. So 20 minus 19 divided by 2, which is again going to give you 0.5. So this correction factor is to be used in this manner to convert the inclusive class interval into the exclusive class interval, because many times we desire that continuity in the data, so we require to convert the inclusive classes into exclusive classes. Now let us see one example where we have to construct a frequency distribution. So there are some numbers which are going to be given. They represent the mutual fund prices which are reported at the end of a week for some selected 40 nationally sold funds. You have to arrange these prices into a frequency distribution having a suitable number of classes. First we had the raw data. Then we decided the number of classes by using the rule described earlier. Then we decided the width of the class, and finally we wrote the table. We use tally bars. It is not compulsory to use tally bars, please note. Just it's better because then you may not make a mistake, but otherwise you can just count also and you can write the frequencies, and you just have to verify whether the total is correct. That means this number should be matching up with the given data points. Okay, so nowadays of course all this is done by making use of the softwares, but even while making use of the software you have to feed the data to the software. So there are various ways of doing this. So when we see that particular section, that time we will talk about that more. Now let us talk about the bivariate frequency distribution. So far we have been talking about the univariate frequency distribution as such. So in univariate frequency distribution we had just one variable, but now we are going to have, sometimes this data may involve two variables. So for example, there could be variables which are being described as profit and the expenditure on advertisements of a group of companies, maybe income and expenditure of a group of individuals, supply and demand of a commodity, etc. Then the frequency distribution which is obtained as a result of cross classification, it is called as bivariate frequency distribution. This it can be summarized in the form of a two-way bivariate frequency table, and as such the values of each variable are grouped into various classes. They may not necessarily be the same, so each class may be different from the other, okay, unlike the univariate distributions. So if the data corresponding to one variable, let us say x, is grouped into m classes, then the data corresponding to another variable y, it could be grouped into n number of classes. M and n need not be as such equal. So what we are going to do is, now we are going to see all this by means of the example. We were asked, write the marginal distribution of x and y, and the conditional distribution of x and y lies between 15 and 20. So marginal distribution of x to 20. So 15 to 20 is over here. So we have got over here nothing, 0, 3, 4, 2 and 2. So that is the conditional distribution of x when y lies between 15 to 20%. Likewise, you can write the conditional distribution of for any x given any range of y. So this was about the bivariate frequency distribution. Now we shall just talk about some different ways in which we can represent the frequencies themselves. First is cumulative frequencies. Here I have taken inclusive class intervals. Now the frequencies, this is number of accidents, it represents this particular class, and this represents the number of weeks, and here we have got cumulative frequencies. Now these cumulative frequencies are of two types. One is less than, one is more than. So how do we go about it? You start with the first frequency, that is 5, and then you keep adding the subsequent frequencies to the previous number. So that is called the cumulative part. So 5, then 5 plus 22, then 27 plus 13, then 40 plus 8, and 48 plus 2, and that is total comes out to be 50. So when you do this, when you start like this from the topmost frequency level, that is the lowest one, the class, and then proceed to cumulate or add all the frequencies, this particular system is called less than cumulative frequencies. If you do it the other way around, that means start with the uppermost class which is given to you. In this case it is 20 to 24. So here we see the addition how it is being done. First we start with 2, then 2 plus 8, then 10 plus 13, then 23 plus 22, then after that 45 plus 5, and like this way we are again getting the total frequency, that is 50. So this is just one way of representing frequencies. If we have to sometimes deal with cumulative frequencies many times, so this is the way to write the cumulative frequencies, both less than and more than. Now we will see the relative frequencies and the percentage frequencies. So here you can see what has happened. Once again the same data set we are using. For relative frequency, what we are doing, we are dividing the frequency by the total number. So this is number of weeks, and 50 is the total number of weeks for this data set. So 5 divided by 50, 22 divided by 50, 13 divided by 50, then 8 divided by 50, 2 divided by 50. Like this way we are getting relative frequency, and the sum of all this, it will come out to be equal to 1. If we multiply this relative frequency by 100, then we get the percentage frequency. So over here 5 by 10 multiplied by 100, 22 by 50 multiplied by 100. Like this way, if we add all this, we will get the total to be as 100. So relative frequencies, the addition will be 1, percentage frequency, the addition will be 100. So thank you. That is all for this session. So you can once again rewind the video to whatever point you want, and again make the notes etc. which you want to as such note down from the video.